I'm thinking, after hearing Kevin share about connectivity, that perhaps I should revamp my whole talk to connectivity of death, or the connectivity of transitions. But I'm realizing there's a deep connection between the internet and my topic tonight, which is kind of a surprise, actually. I wanted to start with a story from India. It's about three laughing monks, who would go from town to town, find the marketplace, and get everybody laughing. Well, they were doing this for a few towns or more, and one day, one of the monks became very ill. And he told the other monks that when he died, he should be buried, no muss, no fuss, with his robes on. So he did die, and his fellow monks did exactly what he wanted. They put him on the barge to head down the river, and there was no muss, no fuss. Well, shortly after the body was lit to be cremated, the people lining the river saw a huge display of fireworks. And they were delighted, or they realized that that was the message, that they were to see the joy in this transition. And anyway, celebration is necessary and important at the time of death. But, you know, we Americans, we look at death in a very different sort of way. We've been taught to kind of suppress death and not look at it, put it in the closet. It's become the orphan, really, in our cycle of life. And Rabbi Schachter Shalomi, bless his soul, he was a rabbi right here in Boulder County until about a year ago. He was doing work on conscious aging. And he says, that really made a lot of sense to me, he says that the reason we've gotten so awkward around the topic of death in our culture is because we've taken it to the hospital in the last 100 years. And think about it, in the hospital, people end up being forced, in a way, to fix us, to make us better. Think of all the doctors and even nurses who are unhappy when their patient dies or doesn't get better. And think of all the money that is used. You know, it's becoming a problem that we spend so much money trying to fix people. So I'm here to share another way to look at all of this and how we might befriend death from way early on in life. Because after all, death is perched on our shoulder from whence we are born. And we don't know, you know, infants die, and children die, and young people die. So we really must be ready and more psychologically, emotionally, spiritually prepared for an event that one day will come to all of us. And by the way, did you know that Plato, once upon a time, said that death is the greatest of all human blessings? Ponder that one. And Mother Teresa was the one who said that death is simply the fastest way back to God. And it truly is a going home. The African American tradition has always called death a going home. And there was an aspect of looking forward to death because they knew that life was the difficult place here on planet Earth, where we have the good and bad and all the angst and the stress between the good and bad is a very difficult place to be sometimes. It's a school. And we get to graduate when we go home and when we have our last adventure of life. I think of a death that is one of my favorites that I heard about. This was not when I was doing my hospice work, but for someone else. And my great aunt actually was the one who told me about this death. But there was a woman, deeply spiritual woman, not particularly religious, but she's the kind who would go into Safeway and make friends with everybody. And she was on her deathbed, and as often happens, wasn't saying or doing very much at that point, connecting with the other side, though the connectivity is there. And right before she left her body, she sat up in bed and she said, "I see hundreds of angels." And then went back and took her last breath shortly thereafter. And I'm thinking, wow, if that's the kind of death we have to look forward to, why are we not talking about it? Why are we not engaged in this piece of life that is actually very vital? In the Buddhist tradition, death is considered, your day of dying, is considered the most important day of your life. And the higher the vibration you have, the more joy, the more love you can carry at that moment, the higher you will go in the next realm. Because, of course, we continue, right? It's just another aspect of life when we move on. In fact, it was John Lennon who said, "I'm not afraid of death because I don't believe in it. It's just moving from one car into another." Kind of comforting to think that John Lennon felt that way, especially seeing how his life ended. So tonight, I would like to challenge you all to make better friends with death in your own life. And if not death, grief, because they're opposite sides of the same coin. And think about, what kind of conversation you might have with someone, perhaps in your family, perhaps a close friend, perhaps someone who's dying or who's ill. Many people will not go to the hospital simply because they don't know, or they don't think they know how to talk to someone who's dying or who's ill. And this really takes away from all of us when we follow our fears and don't do what we could be doing. So I challenge you to do something new in the next week. And there's one possibility, which is that I have a workshop happening in Gun Barrel on Sunday afternoon, as it so happens. So if you're interested in that, ask me more, and we will make a plan. So thank you so much for this opportunity to share tonight, and I wish you all blessings of connectivity.